And welcome to this VATSIM tutorial, which I hope answers one of the most common questions people new to VATSIM have, which is, who am I supposed to talk to when I connect? And this is based on VATSIM in the USA. The rules for other parts of the world are slightly different. I've got a tutorial on VATSIM in the UK, which I'll link to in the description. And this all applies, whether you're flying on Microsoft Flight Sim, FSX, Prepared, XPlane 11, it's the same idea. And this only deals with the scenario of sat on the ground at an airport trying to figure out who to call. So, I'm sat on the ground, who do I contact? The first thing you need to understand is how the top-down system on VATSIM works. So in the real world you'd have a delivery, ground, tower, approach and center controller. And if you're on the ground and you're flying IFR, you talk to delivery. If you're on the VFR, you're probably going to talk to ground. And the way things work on VATSIM is not necessarily will everybody be online. So if you're on the ground at this airport, there's no delivery, there's no ground, but there's a tower, then tower are going to be doing all of the work of tower and ground and delivery. Likewise, approach. If approach is on and ground are on, approach are going to do approach and tower, and then the ground controller will do ground and delivery. And this works whoever's the highest the person you bump up to when you go up this tree, that's the person that you talk to. Caveat, if nobody's online, you can do either text messaging or transmissions on 122.8, and this is regardless of where you are, whether there are published frequencies for the airport, be like a CTAF, a Unicom, or even like a tower frequency that's published. You still use 122.8 if there's no VATSIM controller online. So let's have a look at a few examples. Let's say we're on the ground at Atlanta, and you see online Atlanta Center. ZTL is the Arctic identifier for Atlanta Center. And you also see Atlanta Approach, and you see Charlotte Approach online. Now this is pretty simple, of course. We're at Atlanta and we see Atlanta Approach. There's top down, there's no delivery, there's no ground, there's no tower. We're going to call Atlanta Approach. Pretty straightforward. Something a bit more complicated. We're at Concord. Now, Concord doesn't seemingly, there's no Concord Approach that you see here, same scenario. But if you take a look at where Concord is under the Class Bravo airspace of Charlotte. This is Charlotte, this is Concord. So unlike other parts perhaps in Europe where this would just therefore be uncontrolled, the Charlotte approach controller will be controlling Concord as well. And by that I mean all of Concord, because Concord has a tower. They're going to be controlling everything top down from Concord, including approach, tower, ground, and so on. Now there are other ways that you can find that out, because it's not necessarily the case. If you pull up an approach chart or something like that at Concord, you can see on this ILS for runway 20, it says a Charlotte approach con. So that's a pretty good sign as well. Also, if you look in the facilities directory, and all these things are available on SkyVector, and I'll post some links in the description. Look for the little R with the circle. Charlotte Approach Departure Control. They're controlling top down. You've also got the tower frequency as well. Just note that most of the time on VATSIM, if the tower real world will be closed, i.e. this time here, then you may find that the Charlotte Approach controller in this case may just say, hey, the tower's closed, make your transmissions on Unicom. So let's look at another example. Okay, Mike Romeo November. So here's Charlotte again down here, and here's the Foothills Regional Airport a ways up here, and you think, well, it's not under the Bravo, but maybe Charlotte do control it. Again, pull up an approach chart, pull up the facilities directory if maybe there aren't any approach charts, and in this case you see that it's Atlanta Center. So you're looking at this ZTL controller here if they're on. Your Charlotte approach controller is not going to want to control you here. Also note as well, that this field has no tower, so you're going to be on the Unicom 122.8 for everything you're doing on the ground. But if you wanted an IFR clearance, then you would call Atlanta Center, and when you get airborne, if you wanted some sort of service like flight following, you'd call Atlanta Center. And again, here's the facilities directory. You see the same thing there. So some other common questions. If there's more than one controller on, so let's say we see Atlanta 1 approach, Atlanta 2 approach, Atlanta 3 approach, who are you supposed to call? This can be kind of confusing. Sometimes you'll see multiple centers. Sometimes you'll see multiple towers online and no ground. It can be kind of confusing. Some ways, particularly for the centers, you can try something like a tool like VATSIM. There are lots of others which might give you an idea. You can check the chart supplement to know which facility is covering it. So let's say you're right on the border between two centers, and we'll come to an example of that in a minute. Which one covers the airport I'm at? You can look in the controller notes as well. This depends on what client you're using, but you can take a look at what the controller is saying. Perhaps the controller says where they cover. You can send them a private message, pretty straightforward. Or to be honest, pick one of these 3 approach controllers, call up, tell them who you are, where you are, what you want, and they will quickly transfer you to the right one if somebody else is working that area. A few other unusual cases that you'll see, like Potomac approach in Washington or SoCal. Tools like VATSIM will show, here we've got Memphis, this was all that was online at the time. They just show a straight circle of a fixed distance from the main airport. But you know, even Atlanta approach, they cover much more than that circle on the map. So just double check. And in this video, I'm not going to talk about flight service stations and oceanic. That's a whole other topic for another time. Okay, one last example that it's not always clear. If you look at Tampa down here, Tampa looks like it sits inside Jacksonville, so you would think Jacksonville Center would control Tampa, but here's the controller notes for Jacksonville that were on just this evening. I do not control Tampa. Okay, interesting. If we look at the chart supplement for Tampa, you can see that the Arctic that's controlling Tampa is Miami, which is this one that's further down, not Jacksonville. So sometimes these edge cases, can check that controller info, check the facilities directory for which Arctic it is. Other than that, I hope that gets you started. If you have any questions at all, put them in the comments and I'll be happy to help you out.